Hello, everybody. Welcome to Wholehearted Loving. I'm Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Georgiana.
Today we are going to, I guess you could call it, wrap up our series, but I think we could talk about this in many ways forever, about impact and intention. And the focus today is going to be about parents, parental guilt. We'll get into it. But first, we're going to do a body-based practice. And today I'm going to lead us through just some breathing in and sounding out. So start by feeling your bum on the chair. Feel your feet on the ground. Maybe join your hands. Give your hands some loving touch. See if you can center yourself in your body. And at your own pace, we're going to breathe in and release the breath with whatever sound feels good to you right now. One more breath in. Notice if your body wants to move or shake or stretch. Give yourself whatever movement feels good right now. And put a hand somewhere comforting, supportive on your body. Feel your feet. Feel your bum. And welcome to the podcast.
That was so nice. That was a treat for me. So I feel like I'm always, not always, but I'm often the one leading these things and leading them every day for my clients. And it's really nice to just follow along.
Take a break.
Thanks.
Yeah. I bet parents feel that way sometimes, don't they?
Oh my gosh, yes. I just want to I was answering this question on this app that I've discovered that I love, Agape. You get to answer questions with your friends or people you love or your partner, and the other person can't see your answer until they answer the same question. And one of the questions was, would you like a year-long vacation or a yacht or something else? I was like, I want a year-long vacation. I want to feel like I have zero adult responsibilities. And I think that comes from being a parent and always being responsible and always trying to think ahead about what your children are needing and which developmental phase they're heading into and what they're going to need from me. And it's just, even if I'm not physically doing something for them, like there's this mental energy that goes towards that. So the topic of parental guilt is very fitting.
Yeah. And what we do in our lives for ourselves, for our families, for our children, and the impact that might have on them, whether it has anything to do with our intention or not, it's going to have some kind of an impact. And I know many of us have felt various ways about our parents and have felt very impacted in ways that they often did not intend. You know, parents are, broadly speaking, always doing their best. They're doing their best with whatever tools they've got right now. And we feel a lot of impact just from growing up. We associate it with parents. Sometimes it's directly from them. Sometimes it isn't. So we're going to talk about that a bit more today.
Yeah, I'm excited about this conversation because there's so many tools that I think a lot of parents don't have. And beyond tools, it's also an awareness. When I think about my parents, there were tons of tools they didn't have, like lots of skills that they didn't have because they never learned them anywhere. But beyond that, there wasn't even an awareness that it was important to have that tool.
Right?
And that
Yeah,
skill.
those tools didn't exist. Like this, I always want to stress how new this type of work that we're doing is. Like in geological time, this is really, really new stuff. So we talk about parents not having tools or not having awareness. And it's not that they didn't go out and look for it, it's that it wasn't yet in the social consciousness. We weren't aware of these things and the importance of it. This is how we're evolving as people. And part of it is this new idea of gentle parenting, noticing developmental stages of children. You know, who gave a crap about the developmental stages of children in 1920? Like,
It's funny because, like, I mean, I don't remember all my coursework dating back to that time, but there were still views about children, right? And there
seen
were
but not heard.
tools. Yeah, like smack them. That's a
Yeah,
tool. That was a tool,
it was a tool. Yeah.
right? And now they know more about what kind of emotional impact that has and impact on trust.
Yeah. So, Christ, then you've got these parents who are now, say, in their 70s, watching their kids with their grandchildren and realizing all the things they could have done differently that would have been so helpful. And they're feeling all kinds of guilt about that, you know?
Well, that's what I really encountered with my parents. I feel like when we were raising the boys and they were little, there's probably a time that they thought we were being too soft and they thought we were crazy and what we were doing was doesn't make sense and it's going to backfire and you're going to raise animals. And then I remember slowly seeing things click for my parents. They're like, "Oh, this works.
Mm,
Your children are confident and they're capable and they do have manners, but they also know how to tell you what works for them and what doesn't and how they're feeling and what they're needing. And they come to you. They find solace in you. They trust you for support and advice, which is the opposite of the relationship I had with my parents, even though they were very well meaning.
yeah.
So it's been really neat witnessing them watch how I parent.
Hmm. Yeah, that's lovely. And to be able to accept it, you know, my impression is that your parents are quite accepting of this. They're not feeling defensive, you know, they're not overly having to explain why they did things the way they did them, and they're not getting upset about it and taking on a set of feelings that aren't necessary or helpful.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah,
find that my mom is probably more geared towards feeling guilty. My
right.
dad is more geared towards being much more pragmatic.
Hmm.
And it's been nice to hear sort of my dad remind my mom of these things that you're saying. Like, we only knew what we knew, we were doing our best. And for, my mom to soften in that hardness towards herself for not doing things well or right.
Mm.
And as I've found more compassion for myself and my parents, I can now offer my mom that reassurance that it's okay.
Yeah,
And I wasn't able to do that. Like 10 years ago, I think I was just so angry still and so hurt. If I had to now hold her hurt and hold her guilt, that
oh
would
yeah,
just set me off even more.
totally.
But because of doing this work, not with my mother, but around my mother wound, it enabled me to look more softly towards her and to be able to remind her, like, Mom, I love you. You did your best. It's okay. I still want you to know the impact it had on me because I feel like that's a way I can show you me. But
Hmm.
it's not for the purpose of making you feel bad or guilty or making you wrong.
Yeah.
And yeah.
That's so nuanced and subtle. Like you're talking real subtle inner work energies now. When we start doing this kind of work and we discover everything that's inside, all of this pain and hurt and all of these assumptions we've made about the world that aren't necessarily true, but that we feel it really deeply. And as we start to learn the familial patterns that have influenced that feeling within us, we want to share, right? A lot of us want to go to our parents and talk about this stuff. And what you just said was you did this work on your own. You worked on your mother wound, not with your mother, not in relationship to her or needing anything from her or needing her to be any different. This is work that we do for ourselves, and it changes the dynamic, right? It releases
Yeah.
a lot of that old energy and pain so that we can actually show our parents who we are and share our emotions without needing them to hold them because, they've demonstrated they maybe can't.
Yeah. And it wasn't this beautiful, gracious, linear path. And it didn't happen overnight. I think I was like probably dragged kicking and screaming, metaphorically speaking, away from um, wanting to do this work with my mom and wanting to tell her exactly how she hurt me and wanting to hear the apology. And I remember one conversation we had, and she was right. She had apologized before for things, and I had, brought things up in the past. And she said to me, "Why are you still so angry? Like, why can't you just let it go? Like, what do you want me to do?" And at that time, I don't think I had done enough of the healing work yet. And that just really made me angry and hurt. And I think through tears, I said, like, do you really think I want to feel this? That I want to feel angry with you still? I don't want to feel this way. I can't help that I still feel hurt, that I still don't feel very seen in the pain and in the impact that your actions had on me. And if I could make it go away, I would.
Yeah,
And I think that's sort of where the conversation ended
right.
because there was nowhere for it to go at that time. I still needed to do more work. And I think my mom still was at a point where she took it really hard seeing me in pain. And it brought her more to her own pain, I think, than
Yeah.
her ability to hold and see mine.
Yeah, anytime you present somebody with your pain and the response is like, well, why? That's not going to feel great. And it's an
Yeah.
indication that they're holding some charge as well, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
But yeah.
knowing who can hold the pain is really helpful. Doing this work for ourselves doesn't mean by ourselves. We can clear this kind of stuff out with people who are doing this work, like you and me, in our groups. There are great people to do this work with, and it doesn't need to be with your parent, and your parents don't actually need to be alive for you to heal this relationship either.
No, it's been really healing for me, I think, to be in women's group, to do group work around this, to find friends who want to witness me and me sharing my pain because there was nowhere to share it growing up.
Yeah.
When you have nowhere to share your pain, your parents can't hold your pain because it stirs up too much shame and guilt for them, or they just don't understand. Then, as a child, like, I didn't have any other safe adults to take it to. And so I just held it. And so to be able to be, I think I was, when I joined women's group, maybe I was in my late 30s, to finally, after those decades, be able to just say out loud what my pain of childhood was, what those experiences were. And these people sitting across from me obviously can't fix it. They can't go back in time and change it for me. But just to be able to say out loud what the hurts were and to be able to cry and have a loving person across from me sit there and be with me through that was so healing.
Yeah, totally. You're reminding me of something that was really impactful for me in women's group, and it was a share about parents that this woman in group realized had really impacted her. I think this is a good example to give here in terms of intention and impact. She was really close with both of her parents. Her parents were still married, but there was a different dynamic when her mom was around than when her dad was around. And this came up for her in group, and she realized, oh my God, I don't trust women because dad would change when mom came around. Like we were
Mm.
chummy having fun, and then she would come. And I can't remember if it was that it would get more serious or like the dad felt like he needed to, be some kind of way that was different. Um, and that she realized had a really tremendous impact on her that probably was not intended, dad wanting to seem close and chummy with daughter. That's a beautiful thing. Why wouldn't you like that? But then this other aspect of it is brought in that has such an impact on her, and she hadn't realized it caused her to not trust men. It caused her to not trust women. And, when she's 30, whatever she was, she's discovering that for herself.
Yeah. I think that's why it's so powerful to do this work with other people, because as other people share their experiences, it does something. It stirs up something. It helps you make connections.
Mm-hmm.
And that's really important to realize, wow, I've been walking around for decades not trusting men and women.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, one of the ridiculous, okay, so here's an impact of parents that like they haven't actually done or said anything. It's just something I took from existing. My dad is so great that I just
Mm.
realized, whatever, I was 30 something, I realized like, oh, no man can be as awesome as my dad. So I've kind of just written them off in a way, or assumed that no one can be that great. And I had to actually go around collecting evidence. That was my task for a long time, collect evidence that there are good men. And it was everywhere. It was all
Hmm.
around my life.
And that is such a, I think, important impact to share, because it's not one we usually think of when we think about impacts that were hard on us from our experiences with our parents. Because you'd think, wow, if you had an amazing dad, like, what do you have to complain about? You know? Um, but yeah, that also led your mind to go someplace about the world.
Yeah. Who
So, this
knows?
parental guilt thing, why I think I initially wanted to talk about it. I've been working with parents for probably 2 decades. And the thing I see that gets in the way of most parent child dynamics, whether it's young children or adult children, is parental guilt and parental shame,
Yeah.
right? When we all we hold is our guilt and shame, and it's like right at the forefront. It becomes this lump of stuff, energy between us and our child. And it doesn't matter how much we love them and they love us, what they want to share with us and what they want us to see and what they want acknowledgement for, we're not able to really connect with them in that way, because everything has to go through that filter of our guilt and our shame.
Yeah.
And so when I work with parents, we work on that piece. We work on slowly holding that parental guilt and shame with love and care and compassion, so that it can dissolve and transform back into like this deep love and for their children, because that's where it came from originally, this deep hope of doing well by their children and giving their children what they need. um, and from that place, they're able to sit across from their kids and hear the truth from their kids. Kids just want you to hear their truth. I mean, human beings just want you to hear their truth. You can't hear and hold someone's truth when you have all this shame and guilt in the way.
Yeah.
Right? So that's one thing I would really suggest for all of us to do is notice how much shame and guilt you carry in each of your relationships. And are you willing to learn a different way, a gentler way to hold that shame and guilt so you can get back to what your deeper desire was initially,
Mm-hmm.
and then be able to connect more deeply and hold another person's truth,
Yeah.
even if it
And
means they want to tell you that you hurt them.
yeah. Yeah. That's what I've been working on personally lately, is making sure not to defend or explain myself when somebody comes to me with their hurt. And it really is, I love that you're talking about developing a relationship with it, being in relationship with the feelings of guilt and shame, because this is not a finite well of guilt and shame that you can empty and then it's gone, right? It's going to come up. And there's all the stuff of life too, right? We're describing the guilt and shame of, whatever our behaviors, our past, the impact that we've accidentally had. But that's just one layer of it, right? Then there's this really practical, physical layer of how much time do you have in the day? How well are you feeling? How well rested are you? How are you going to interact? I'll sit with your pain in this moment
Mhm.
and we'll do it really well. But tomorrow I'll have a headache and I'll do a bad job of it. And that's going to add more guilt and shame. And if I don't have a relationship with it, then it's just going to keep building up instead of moving.
Mhm. Yeah, there's so many reasons why we can't bring our full presence and warmth and acceptance to someone else's needs or pain, and that's human and that's normal.
Yeah.
And when we can be compassionate with ourselves about it, we can go back and revisit it with that person and say, like, I couldn't be what you needed yesterday, and I'm here now. Is there
Yeah.
anything you still want me to know?
Right. Yeah. It's not too late. There are messages we can still deliver that will clear and open that connection to make it a place of love
Mhm.
instead of guilt and shame.
It's never too late. I have parents ask me that all the time. Is it too late? I always tell them it's never too late. If your acknowledgement and your apologies are genuine and your child can feel that and you're consistent enough that they start slowly believing that it's genuine and it's consistent, I don't think I've met a single adult who, given the opportunity to sit across from their parent and really hear genuine apologies, who would say, I don't want that. That
Yeah.
would impact me,
Right.
you know?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
And children are so forgiving. They want to, like, their survival is to have good connection with us as parents. So
Yeah.
they want to be in good relationship with us. They are wired to forgive,
Yeah.
right? Until it gets to the point where they realize, oh, nothing's changing. And then they harden up, perhaps.
Yeah.
But again, if we're willing to do the work and be consistent and genuine and not let our shame and guilt get in the way, they want to forgive.
Yeah. It makes all the difference in the world. And I sympathize so much the wanting to know why, the wanting to understand. That's a beautiful way to be able to connect with other people at that mind level, at that deep understanding. But when it comes to feelings, often they don't make sense, and often the person sitting across from you might not understand them. So being able to clear all that crap out of your head beforehand is really helpful. If you're gonna, I'm thinking about a client I have who's in her 70s and her adult son, she had this challenging dynamic with. So I just encouraged her to clear up. She started saying, here are all the things he's going to say and do that don't make sense to me. And I was like, okay, clear those out. We went through some prompts and cleared those out. And the message she wanted to go into this visit she was going to have with him, the message she wanted to deliver was, I'm here and I love you. And like, that's
Mm.
it. So we got her as clear as possible connected with that. And that's the presence that she was able to bring because she now had space for it. And he was immediately responsive. She was like, this is the most connected, loving time I've had with my son. And he phoned me afterwards. Like he never does
Aw,
that. People just want
it's
to be
beautiful.
heard and accepted. Like it's just that simple. And if you don't understand what they're talking about, they're not the person to talk to you about that. Go talk to your friend. Be like, oh, here's all this crazy shit that my kid just finished saying. I don't understand any of it, but most deeply, I want to feel loving and connected with them.
Right. And for us to be able to say to and convey, I don't understand what you're saying to me, and it doesn't matter because it doesn't change my love for you and the fact
Yes.
that I support you. Right. If I would have heard that, life would have been very different.
Yeah.
But
Totally.
my parents had no idea that that would be helpful.
Yeah. And you weren't able to tell them, you know?
No.
Yeah. And we were too reactive. I am reminded again of 90 Day Fiance.
Stephanie loves this show so much. And
Obsessed.
I was like, what are you talking about? What is this garbage? And then one
Which
night I
garbage?
watched with her.
This is tasty garbage. Yeah. It's pretty interesting for people who are curious about relationship dynamics, right? And making assessments. There's so much obvious stuff happening. But so what I was just reminded of was one of the people in this show is gay, and he came out to his family years ago, and they just were not they just shut down immediately. They were, I think, quite religious Mexican family, and they were just like, nope, you're not gay, shut up. And so he hid back in the closet, And now we're years later and we're on 90 Day Fiance, and he's got his fiance is moving and he's got to tell his parents. So he tells them, and he's able to deliver information now. You know, it's been a few years. He's been planning this. He's able to
Mhm.
say, basically, his message is, I am gay and it would hurt so much if you couldn't love me because of that fact.
Oh,
Oof. And the mom breaks down. And, you know, they've edited it in a way so that you're like, oh my God, his parents are homophobes. And like, what's going to happen? She's so upset that he's gay. But then, as always happens with the show, it ends up being quite lovely when you get to the actual scene. She just goes over and hugs him and says, how could you ever think I wouldn't love you? You're my son. I love you so much. And the dad, meanwhile, is going, if you didn't tell me you were hurt, how could I know it? It was just
oh.
so perfect. And, you know, they both accepted what was going on for him. And partly that's because he was able to share of himself, you know? Um,
Yeah.
yeah,
That that is so sweet, and it reminds me of like what happened in my life because you said, "Oh, and we don't know to share. We're reactive. We're hurt." And I think I always carried this assumption that my parents should know what is hurting me.
right.
They should not do it.
Yeah.
And even if they have done it, they should know it hurt me and they should come and acknowledge that. And my poor behavior should be an indication to them that
Ah,
they've hurt me and
yes,
that they need to come resolve something and that they should know what they did,
right.
right? And I remember I must have been in my early 30s. I had done, personal growth workshop at the time, and one of the things was like call people who are important to you in your life, right? And so I called my dad, was talking to my dad about, our relationship and what he meant to me and what was hard for me. And like through tears, I'm like in the stairwell of whatever building we were in. And I just said, I just wanted to know that you were proud of me. And like that took so much to say that one sentence. And I remember thinking, should I say it? Should I not? Like, that's a really vulnerable thing to say. And I'm like, screw it, I'm just going to say it. I had no idea how he would respond. And he said the most beautiful thing. He said, I've always been proud of you. And I think I just started bawling even more. And I'm thinking, what the heck do you mean? And he continued to say, everywhere we went, anyone I talked to, I would always tell them how I was so proud of you. And he said, I just didn't know that I was supposed to tell you.
Ooh,
Mm,
damn. Whew.
yeah.
Wow.
And so we had a really nice conversation after that. But I'm thinking that took us 30 some odd years to get to. Like
Wow.
how much pain I was harboring all those years, just wanting to know that my parents were proud of me and like not understanding why they never said that to me. Um,
Your
always
dad's
feeling like,
pretty good
no.
at holding feelings, hey?
my dad, my dad is great at holding feelings if I can come from a pragmatic place and sort of put in context why it's important.
Okay.
He goes very quickly to pragmatics first.
Right.
So I found that I have the skill to be able to put it in context.
Yeah.
And like that's sort of how I think we repaired our relationship was I was willing to talk to my dad and
Right.
not just be really angry with him. And if I use reason to help talk about feelings,
Yeah.
he's like, "Oh, yeah, that
Well, that
makes
makes
sense."
sense.
But
Yeah.
if I just want to talk about feelings, he would have often I think went to reasoning,
Right.
which was hard for me as a kid.
That's hard. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're bringing up something that I think is really useful for people to hear, because there's this meme of the world that's basically, if you can't accept me at my worst, you can't have me at my best. And I think
Mhm.
it's easy for us to think, well, someone needs to accept us completely. Someone needs to be able to hear us in whatever way we're communicating. And the reality is that all communication and all relationships are a two-way street. They're going to be fielding our stuff and we're going to be fielding theirs. And even though in an ideal world you'd be able to come to your dad in any way and he would be able to receive you, that's just not the reality of human beings. So
Yeah.
developing this skill to present information in a way that can be received is also very helpful.
It is really helpful. And this is a really big discernment to make because there's a time where we change over this threshold. We go over this threshold because as a child, it's not our responsibility to know how to tell a parent what's going on and what's wrong and what they've done that's hurt our feelings because you don't know how to do that. That's not your role. The role is actually, the responsibility is actually for the parent to find attunement with the child, to come with curiosity and compassion and try to figure out as best as they can what's going on with this kid. And then at the same time, help them grow the skills to be able to make sense of their experience, to be able to express their feelings and needs so that one day they can take that responsibility and take on that role where they can openly tell someone how they're feeling, what they're needing, what hurt them, right? But again, many of our parents would never have learned those skills or that that was necessary. And so I now often work with clients who are adults who want their partners to always know what's wrong and what they did wrong and what they did that hurt them.
Mm.
And I'll always ask them, like, there's something that I'd love to share, but you might not love what I'm going to say. And it's sort of blunt.
There's that skill. Yeah.
Right? Are you willing to hear this?
Mm-hmm.
And, they'll say yes, okay. And we have a lot of fun in our sessions. So there's usually a lot of laughter. And I'll share something along the lines of that is a very childlike need that makes sense when we're children. And it's absolutely appropriate when we're children. And when we haven't received that as children, it makes sense that we have all sorts of feelings about it and we might need to grieve that we never had that experience. And once you become an adult and you're in an adult relationship, we now have to take on the responsibility of learning how to notice what's going on for us and communicate that with a person and let them know what we need and what's not working and not make the assumption that the other person's going to know.
Totally. So much of that is the fear of sharing, the inability, the lack of skills for sharing our needs and feelings is part of the impact of whatever our family situation has been growing up. So we imagine then that we have to blow up, or what we're accustomed to is blowing up, or we'll have some set of rules in our mind that make it acceptable for us personally to share certain types of information, or we'll have that, the stopper has been pulled and we're freaking out, the floodgates are open kind of thing. So what I want people to know about this is that that is also a process of clearing and self-compassion, a place that you come to. Um, for sure, I used to only express feelings when I was at my limit, right? When they
Mm-hmm.
burst forward,
Yeah.
when I exploded. And now it's just, I'm just reporting my mind. I'm reporting what's coming up for me. There isn't a charge in that same way. Um,
Yeah.
so that's possible, right? You can absolutely have that.
I love the practice and the skill of reporting my mind. It was
Mm,
such a life changer for me. And reporting my mind and also doing it around people who are just as committed to hearing what someone's mind is making things mean without taking it personally.
mm,
I was like, oh, I can just give you a running monologue of what my mind is doing. And we might laugh a little bit about it, we might cry about it, but like it doesn't need to go to all these wild places. It's just something that happens in the background, right? And
right,
some of those thoughts might need to be challenged or held with some love and care or have some curiosity turned towards them, but it's not a big deal where our mind goes.
right. When a big hurt comes up, like it's a pretty rare thing for somebody to be actively trying to hurt you, you know? Most of the time when hurts come up, they're the result of the meaning we've made out of something. And to report when something comes up initially is to not give energy to this string of negative thought patterns that cause these unpleasant emotions to come up. It's a huge gift. Like, hey, I just noticed this thing and I'm making it mean this. Give me a
Mm-hmm.
reality check. It's a beautiful
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah, and we run people through a whole list of what we're making it mean. When we do group work together, what am I making this mean about me as whatever I am in my role in our relationship as a wife, as a partner, as a friend? What am I making it mean about you? What am I making it mean about you in this role? What am I making it mean about us and our relationship and the
And the
future of this
future.
relationship and the situation? And
Yeah.
whenever we walk people through this exercise, they're mortified and elated and surprised at how quickly, in a matter of seconds, their mind has made one thing, one roll of the eye, a certain tone
Yeah.
mean all sorts of things
Yeah.
about everything.
In their subconscious mind, right? And if you ask the questions, it comes out. But if you just ask them like, "Oh, what do you think about that?" They'll say something really reasonable, like, um, "Oh, well, I know that I don't know what it means, so, I'm not really thinking about it too much." I'm like, let's ask some more questions and see what you actually believe, because there's a ton in there. We make it up in an instant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when we get in the practice of catching it and being able to just report it out loud, that's why, like, I encourage people to walk around your house when you're by yourself and just report your mind. Right now, a thought that I have is, and it's wild. And if you can do that just in the privacy of your own home, talking to yourself, it's going to
Yeah.
totally change your life and your relationships.
Yeah. Go to the grocery store and notice the people there. And you'll realize that you have made 1,000 meanings in 1 second. You're going to make meaning about what you notice them putting in their grocery cart, what they're wearing. You're going to
What
have
they're
ideas about
driving,
their
how
job.
they
Yeah,
park.
totally. All of it we make meaning of, just little subconscious meaning. It's pretty wild.
It's good entertainment,
Yeah, it is.
free entertainment.
Is there anything you had written down, a list of, maybe it was
Yes.
questions?
I wanted to talk about, I think, two more pieces to this conversation. One is why sometimes as a parent, even though you're so well intentioned, we're not able to give to our children or hold space for their truth in a way that we would like. And I remember, being too tired, too exhausted, too heartbroken because of something else that was going on in my life. Um, Sometimes thinking, you already have it way better than I did.
Yep.
And, all sorts of reasons. Like you said, I didn't sleep well. I have a work deadline. It doesn't really matter, but so many reasons. And I just want parents to be gentle with themselves. That it makes sense if you can't show up for the people in your life or your children in the way that you would like to.
Hmm.
And if you do notice a pattern or it's happening more often than you would like, I hope that you bring some compassionate curiosity to, what's going on and what you're needing and what you're needing to take care of, what kind of support you're needing in order to be able to fill your resources back up a bit so that you can give in the way that you want to your kids. Um, and how important it is for parents to have a trusted person, whether that's the co-parent, the partner, or like strangers, a support group. I facilitated parent support programs for probably almost 2 decades where parents could just come and talk about things beyond diaper creams and like diapers and what food you're feeding your kid, but like really the struggles and the challenges of raising children. And every parent left feeling more resourced to actually be with their children because all those stresses they could just get out of their system and see that they were not alone, right?
Hmm.
So the fears we have about being a parent, the shortcomings that you feel you might have, the skills that are clunky for you, take those feelings and those frustrations and those fears and let someone hold you in that physically, emotionally, metaphorically, energetically, so that you can feel more resourced and lifted up. Ask people to tell you what they see in you as a parent that they love, that they know that your children are lucky to get to experience. You need to fill yourself up in that way to be able to actually give your children what they need. So that's a big thing I want parents to know.
Building a scaffold of support and inner strength.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's beautiful. You used a term there that I think deserves some clarifying. Um, your truth, when your kid
Mm-hmm.
comes to you with their truth. So
Yeah.
I think it's important to distinguish between children and adults again. Um, my experience is that there can be some confusion with this term when adults use it in a way that's just not developmentally possible for children, kids who are just coming to you with their feelings. This is just what's happening. It's not a
Mm-hmm.
construct, it's the
Mm-hmm.
truth. As an adult, we start throwing this term around, my truth, this, my truth, that.
Mm-hmm. Right.
And often that thing we're calling truth is a giant apparatus of ego based nonsense and meaning making that we've
Yeah.
developed over the course of our life. And the simplest kernel of truth underneath that is some form of either sadness or anger or joy that we're afraid of. So we call it something else. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's going to be super important for people who are wanting to find either more support or a different relationship with their parents as adults, is to get really clear on what is true for you. The simplest, clearest truth that isn't buried underneath a pile of stories and assumptions.
Yeah. And for some people, that's a lot of peeling back layers because they weren't allowed to speak up
Yeah,
about their experience growing up. So they've hidden it under so many layers of other gunk they think is more acceptable to say or
totally.
feel,
Yeah. And
right?
that creates more confusion. When I go to my mother and try to make things make sense to her, we've got different meaning makers, right? We've got different value systems and ideas about what's important. So I'm not going to make logical sense for her in the way that she might like. We won't be able to connect that way. But what she can understand, and what all humans can understand about each other, is that feelings layer. It
Yes.
doesn't mean that they can accept it or hold it, but all humans understand the feeling of being sad, and when that's the simplest thing you're presenting, I feel sad right now,
Mm-hmm.
it's rarely challenged.
Yeah. That's why, it's so important to be able to get to the core experience, right? And even then, I remember saying, well, I'm just angry. And yes, there was a part of me that was feeling angry, but really what was truer is I feel deeply sad.
Yeah, yeah,
But I didn't know how to say that. I didn't even know that's how I was feeling.
yeah,
So sometimes it takes some getting to know ourselves practice
yeah, for sure.
to be able to get to the core.
Yeah,
Yeah, and I always make an assumption. I don't know why we don't do this as a society in general, but my assumption is whatever my children tell me, that's the truth.
mm,
Like in terms of like their experience of something, right? That's how they experienced it.
yeah,
I don't have to feel that same way. I remember um, Luca saying the sweetest thing. I might have told this story before, but he was at kindergarten and he didn't want to go back one day. And it was very unusual for him to not want to go to school. And so I asked him, hey, bud, what's up? And he said, the teacher's been yelling. I said, oh, okay. And I'm trying to get a gauge on what that means exactly. Is she like yelling really terrible things at kids? Is she raising her voice in frustration, giving an instruction with, a more stern tone? So I'm trying to gather information, asking a 5-year-old questions. And one of the questions I asked was, or I got the information from him that she wasn't yelling at him, but at some other kids. And then he elaborated. I asked, well, did it seem to bother the other kids? And his response, it was like golden and so quick. He was like, no, but it bothers me. And I was like, good for you. Good for
Hmm.
you, kid. Where he was like, I don't care if it doesn't bother anyone else. It bothers me.
Yeah.
Bothers me enough that I don't want to go back to school on
Yeah.
Monday. And that is the truth.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And he felt free enough to say, that's the truth.
Yeah. Good. Didn't you tell me there's some age for kiddos, and prior to this age, it's like impossible for them to tell lies? Is that true?
I probably once told you that age. I don't remember it off the top of my head, but yeah, it's like the young children don't have this ability. Like people talk about my children are manipulating me.
Hmm.
Right? Children are just trying to get a need met. And yes, they will watch your behavior. And if they think whining about it will get their need met, they will start doing that. But that's not manipulation. That's just
Yeah.
smart,
Yeah.
right? Understanding cause and effect. So there definitely is like an age range, but I don't remember it off the top of my head. Maybe it's sort of like around that 6, 7, 8 range. I don't
Yeah.
know.
I
Yeah.
definitely was telling lies by 9. I remember lies. Childish lies.
Lies are such a good topic to get into. Like what causes a child to
Oh,
lie? Like I've
right.
talked to so many parents about lying and
Yeah.
it's such a eye-opening conversation.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. You had another
Um
point you wanted to make.
I did. And this part means a lot to me because this is the apology and acknowledgement portion. And I grew up with parents who loved me, but did not do a very good job with apologizing. I think just culturally, maybe generationally, just wasn't a thing. And so apologies and acknowledgement mean a lot to me. I think they mean a lot to people in general, but for sure for me because there was such a shortage of it growing up. So, what I jotted down was things that, we had talked earlier about how it's never too late. It's never too late to offer a genuine acknowledgement or apology. I wrote down some things that I would have loved to hear. Or maybe if you're a parent listening, you would have loved to hear as an adult child or young child, or maybe you want to offer to your children, which is sorry, I didn't handle that well. Right? Like I've said that many times to my kids, like, I did not handle that well. I'm sorry. Right? Or sorry, I wasn't able to give you what you needed and deserved. Right? And that's more vague. Maybe there's a specific thing they needed and deserved, and you're not able to give it. But just the general notion of acknowledging that I think is significant.
Hmm.
Or I wasn't able to put your needs and your pain before mine. And this is a big one because I think this happened a lot, especially in relationship with my mom. She's such a deep feeler, bless her. I'm sure I got that from her. Um, that like she was just so affected by seeing me in pain, but then it would all be about her pain.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, what about me? Like, I'm the one coming to tell you something's wrong. And now I got to soothe you, right? Which was hard for me. If she would have been able to say, I'm sorry, I wasn't able to put your pain and your need in front of mine, I think I just would have bawled my eyes out and be like, oh my God, you finally see me.
Yeah.
It's been so hard all these years.
Yeah.
I just wanted you to hold me. And here I am having to comfort you. It's one of the hardest things I remember being a kid. Um, I wasn't able to see past my own fears.
Mm.
That was a big one. I think my mom, and I think culturally, fear is used as such a driving force in Chinese culture, at least my experience of it. I
Hmm.
think my mom was fearful of so many things and it just got in the way of me being able to share my excitement or,
Yeah.
dreams.
For sure. Well, and the parental role, right? The role of technically needing to protect and warn you about all the things that you ought to reasonably be afraid of, that can just take over.
It really can. Like I've had to practice that as a mom, be very intentional about like, when is this my fear
Yeah.
and a fear that's been passed down from generation, and when is this actually something I need to say something to my kids about?
Yeah.
And like, even if I were to say something, what's something actually constructive that would
Mm.
help them in this moment? Right. So that's another whole episode, I think, talking about fears.
Mm.
What else did I write down here? Oh, this one hits hard. I wasn't able to protect you from the chaos in the home. I'm
Mm.
sorry I wasn't able to protect you from the chaos in the home. I'm sorry I wasn't able to like not create chaos in the home to begin with, right? There was so much fighting in my home growing up, and it was so hard to be in that environment. And I think I deeply longed for that acknowledgement that that's a hard position to be in as a kid, and that there is an expectation and a hope that your parents protect you from that, right?
Yeah.
I many times I think I wish my mom would have said, "I'm sorry I didn't protect you from dad saying really mean things to you,"
Yeah.
right? Um, I'm sorry I didn't stick up for you when those moments happened.
Oof.
Like, that's hard
Amen.
too. Like, that makes no sense as a kid. When you're a kid, like, why would one parent let the other kid say really nasty or let the other parent say really nasty things to you?
Yeah.
And like, grow being grown and having perspective, I understand what was going on in their dynamic that caused that to happen. But as a child, I surely didn't understand. And I made it mean all sorts of things about me and whether I was worth protecting and whether I'm supposed to just sit here and listen to someone who apparently loves me say really nasty things about me and to me. So I would have loved to have heard that.
Mm-hmm.
And this started out as a little bit of a generic list of what I think adult children might want to hear, young children might want to hear. And then I realized it became a very specific list of things that I would have loved to hear from my parents. And it brought me to this thought that we don't need our parents to be willing, able, or alive to give us these apologies and acknowledgments. Just the act of writing this out for myself is so healing. The act of saying them out loud, the act of saying them out loud and have you witness them,
Mm-hmm.
right? I know I've also done it where I've sat across from someone and told them exactly what I want acknowledgement for, and they will say those exact same things, and my body hearing it will just settle and release.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
One of
it's
my
really
favorite
powerful.
things that you do is, and I want people who grew up in non English speaking homes to try this magical gift that Georgiana has done. It's type it into Google Translate and hear the words that you wanted to hear from your parents in their mother tongue or whatever language was spoken in your home.
Yeah, that was just one day me being a dork and thinking, wow, like it's so powerful to hear these acknowledgments. I wonder what it would be like to hear them in my mother tongue. Because when I work with clients where their first language was something other than English, I'll have them go through their various prompts in their mother tongue and in English and have them feel in their body the differences. And it's always so neat and amazing and enlightening to notice the differences. And I was sitting on the couch one day. I'm like, technology is surely able to help us with this. So I went on to Google Translate and typed in like English, and I think I typed in, "I'm so sorry I wasn't very good at apologizing," or something. And I had it translate into Cantonese and play. And, it sounds a little robotic, but whatever. Like I still felt it. I was like, oh, that would have been so nice to hear.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this feels good. Okay. Thank you. Thank
It
you,
really
Google.
feels good. Like it makes a difference. I can imagine, and I know when we started doing this in group, when I was a participant in group, I was like, well, if I'm asking you for it, then it doesn't count and it's not going to have an impact. It just does. Hearing these words just does.
It does. And like the sciency thing of it is like, I think many people have studied it, but Dr. Dan Siegel, like interpersonal neurobiology, like something happens when you hear those words that your nervous system like settles and releases in a way that's been holding for all these years.
So much holding.
Yeah.
Yeah. in groups, just the simple magic of giving someone the feedback that their feelings make sense. Wow, it
Yes.
makes sense that you felt that way. Wow, that sounds like it was really hard. Like that's enough to
Yeah.
send
No
somebody into
wonder,
tears. Yeah, no wonder.
right? No wonder.
Yeah,
No wonder you haven't wanted to have contact with your mother, brother, sister, whoever,
yeah,
right? No wonder family gatherings have been hard for you. No wonder you felt so hurt. The no wonder sentence was also like so significant in my life. And when I teach people to use it, they're like, I feel so much better,
yeah,
right? Because nobody wants to feel like they're crazy. And so when we use the no wonder statement, when we start acknowledging and giving ourselves the acknowledgement that we've been longing for, it really sort of says like your tears made sense, your pain and your hurt and your needs make sense and they matter,
yeah.
right? And I use this practice not just for mother father wounding, but for past partners. Like I talk to so many people who feel like they have no closure with exes. And there was just never an apology, never an explanation. And that experience like nearly destroyed me because I was like, what just happened? How can something be so good and then all of a sudden so terrible and I have no answers? And carrying so much hurt and having nowhere for it to go,
Except into
right?
the
Like I
meaning maker. That
except he's a
processes
meeting
a
maker.
lot.
And like
Yeah.
I drew the line. I was like, I am not going over to his house and screaming and yelling at his front door, demanding to know answers. I was like, I'm not going to do that. A past version of me might have done that, but I'm not going to do that. And I remember one night we were in women's group sitting under the willow trees because we used to meet outside in the summers. And I said, Steph, one day, it was after group, I said, one day, would you just sit across from me and let me say all the things that I want to be able to say to this ex of mine who I will never get to say, I'll probably never get to say these things to him because he's not open to a conversation. And you said, yeah, sure. How about right now? And I was like, okay. And I took you up on that offer, and it was such a healing experience to be able to say the things, cry, scream, yell, get all that stuff out, get the stuff out I wanted acknowledgement for, right? So I've also, suggested to people, and I've done this myself, is write the apology letter that you've always wanted to receive
Mm,
from whoever it is and see what happens. Because for me, what happens is all the tears come. Because finally, like I'm also acknowledging that those were hard moments. It's not just I'm waiting for someone else to acknowledge that I wasn't crazy and that my feelings made sense. It's I'm acknowledging that that was hard and that was not okay.
yeah.
And it's a deep act of self-love, I think, to write yourself the apology letters that you may never receive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Release some of that energy, that sadness for sure. Good. Ooh, okay. We're at about an hour. How you feeling?
I'm feeling hot.
Hot? Gigi has the corona.
Yeah. I'm drinking this Chinese herbal concoction.
Oh, good.
Yeah. And
Good.
hopefully it will pass right through me quickly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you've held up very well and you haven't coughed at all.
I know. I'm shocked.
Good job.
Maybe excitement makes the cough go away.
Oh, great. Oh,
I
and do
think the
we
cough.
want to say a few words about priming the body for peace before we sign?
Yeah. I mean, what I want to say this time about priming the body for peace is that we have created a program for you where you get to practice all the little things that help you get comfortable with feeling peaceful in your body. Because if you want a peaceful life, we're going to have to be comfortable with actually feeling peaceful, which we don't realize often. We are not very comfortable feeling peaceful. But a bigger thing I want to share, and that I'm excited to share, is we're making it free for early childhood educators and for teachers. And teachers have been such an important figures in my life, when times were tough at home. School was always where I felt like it was a safe place, where I was seen. And I think teachers do so many wonderful things in the lives of children and community. And for us to be able to say we're giving it to teachers for free, that just, I don't know, makes my heart really happy. So if you are a teacher, or if you know a teacher, if you love a teacher, and you think that this would make a difference in their life to have these skills and get a chance to practice, then let them know.
Yeah, I'll put a link in the thingy, the blurby thing. Um, Teachers hold so much. They are a sounding board for so much. They receive so many feelings and projections, and they have to field so much fear and pain. Um, and the interpersonal dynamics of children. I mean, that's a lot, and I want
Yeah.
them to feel as supported as they can for themselves. So yes, very excited about this.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you want to say more, or should I lead us through a self connection practice?
Yeah, lead us through. That would be great.
I feel the need for holding. So,
Okay.
this is one that I love. And so, let's find that feeling of anchoring down, anchoring in. For me, it's feeling my butt on the ottoman, and I am, for a moment, pushing down with my hands onto my legs. So, I feel the weight and pressure of that. Noticing your breath. And if you want to follow along in this holding, I like to put my right hand under my left arm and take my left hand and place it either on my left shoulder or on my left arm. And for a moment, just feel how it feels to hold yourself with gentleness and care. Notice what it does for your breath and your posture. And if you'd like, I'd like to add a dropping of the head and the neck. And just being here for 3 full breaths. And while you're here, you might connect it with just that sweetness of reminding yourself that you deserve acknowledgement and apologies. We all do. And even if they can't be received by the person who you wish they came from, there's things you can still do to give yourself some of that relief.
That's sure
And
nice.
staying here for as long as it feels good to.
Thanks, Chi Chi.
Yeah, you're welcome. I see a beautiful book in your background.
Oh, it's Shay Shay's book.
Shay Shay's book, Becoming the One. If
There
you
it is.
haven't read Becoming the One by Shalina Ayana,
Mm,
it's a definite recommend.
yeah,
It's a beautiful book. It's
I'll
like a
put that
love
in the
note
blurb
to
too.
yourself.
Yeah, it
What's that?
is. I'll put that in the blurb too.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah. Okay. You gonna sign
All
off?
right.
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay.
All right.
So as always, please like, follow, and subscribe if you haven't already. And if anything we've said here today has been helpful for you, please share it with somebody that you care about. And we'll see you next
Yes, and
time.
check out Priming the Body for Peace. I think if you go to our website, right, wholeheartedloving.com,
Yep.
you're going to find a link. And if you're a teacher or if you know a teacher, sign up, share it with a teacher, spread the love. It's free.
Yeah.
All
Nice.
right.
Yeah. Okay. Thank
Okay.
you. See you next
Bye.
time.